few minutes past the top of the hour, and we have a lot of questions from the community. This is our 5th town hall, and we so appreciate all of you dialing in and joining and sharing your questions beforehand. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And, you know, we thought we would start big picture. So, Leemon, what is your vision for the future? Looking at where you all are now and where you want to be, what specific changes would you like to see in the world regards to technology, travel, entertainment, or human society in general?
Oh, cool. We usually start with the Hedera stuff and do sort of the fun stuff at the end. Now we're mixing it up. That's nice. So let me tell you where I think the world is heading for technology and all that stuff. I do think AI is going to be really big. We're going to have robots in the near future, cars that drive themselves, even home robots, and also that whole closed cycle of robots doing everything from mining to manufacturing other robots, which would allow us to colonize the solar system. And I do think that we will see that. When we have robots that can do the closed cycle, then we will also colonize Mars and Moon, and Venus is slightly harder. It's the most Earth-like place in the solar system, 20 miles up, but kind of short on hydrogen. So you need to import hydrogen, I think, to have water. So we'll do that. I think that we will have very powerful AI, but I'm still not convinced we'll ever have AI that can do natural language understanding in a good way, to read the newspaper and understand it. That looks really hard. But the home robot that cooks and cleans and takes care of your house, that I think we're going to have. So we're pretty close on that. In energy, I think we're going to see really interesting things. Small fission reactors, small modular reactors that are walk-away safe, I think are going to be a big thing. Solar and wind will continue to improve, and wave power, those things will continue to improve. The really big thing is batteries. I think that we're going to see improvements over the next few years in batteries that might double or quadruple or whatever the energy density, which will mean all our cars end up switching from petroleum to batteries, which would be great. And maybe we'll even improve enough to make aircraft switch to electric. That's not entirely clear. And we may even have other cool energy things like fusion. I would love to see that. I don't think things like ITAR will ever succeed, honestly, but take ITAR and give it better batteries and make it tiny and you get spark. That might succeed. Or shear flow stabilized Z-pinch. I don't know if that can work, but if it works, it would be incredibly tiny and simple and cheap for fusion. So we'll see. Who knows what kinds of things will happen. Entertainment, VR is going to be big, AR. So you put on glasses. I don't mean big ski goggles, but little sunglasses, and you can just see things overlaid on the world, or you can see entirely separate worlds. AR and VR, they will all merge together. That is coming. It will be big, I think. Online entertainment will be big. Esports and things will be big in entertainment. And I do think that ledgers are poised to infiltrate every part of the world. All parts of the economy will be affected by ledgers, and we're going to see that. And I'm excited that I'm in a company that's part of this revolution with ledgers. I will say, though, that you didn't just ask, where do I think we're headed? You also asked, where do I want us to be headed? Yeah, I want us to be headed in all those places. Sadly, I don't think we have nanotech coming along very fast. I really wish that would come along faster. And genetic engineering may or may not have a huge impact. I think it's going to definitely solve a bunch of bad problems, but it could do things like hugely expand our lifespan, or it might not. It's not clear yet. So I hope it will, and I hope that we someday get around to putting money into nanotech and actually get that. But the bigger picture, what do I hope for societies as a whole, would be, I really would like a world that didn't have war between nations, didn't have oppression of governments on their citizens, and didn't have between people racism and other forms of hatred. I really wish that we could get rid of all of that. And there are things we can do to get rid of parts of that, and we have to be doing that. And then I just said the negative. I wish we didn't have hatred in all these different levels. We also should have the flip side. We should have love. We should be doing things positive to help each other. And that is important. And anything we can do to encourage that, we need to do. So kind of fun starting off with a fun question today, and I'm glad that we did.
Thanks, Leemon. All right, now that we are all fired up and inspired, okay, we're going to dive a little bit more into Hedera specifically. So Mance, this next one is for you. How many TPS, again, looking to the future, how many TPS do you hope to be at the end of 2020 and also at the end of 2021?
So if we look at where we started, I think that's interesting. So in September of last year, just after open access, we had 4 TPS. And then in January of this year, we had 6 TPS. In June, last time I gave an update to the council, we were at 13 TPS, and I just looked the other day, and I think we're approximately 17 TPS. So that's 400% growth in network usage since open access. Our goal is to get to 50 TPS by the end of this year. But frankly, at this stage, our true measure of progress is not TPS. It's the growth in high quality projects that are working with us that will launch, in the short term or long term. So today we're still planting the seeds that will result in high TPS in the months and years to come. And while it's exciting to watch the TPS growth in near real time, which is very cool, it's more exciting to see the projects that we're going to be announcing that will drive the TPS in the out years.
And TPS here is transactions per second that customers, real people, are using in our network, not what our network's capable of. We're capable of 10,000, but
yeah, thank you for
what's actually being used is what you just talked about.
Yeah, so we always talk about it without thought that it could be confused, and we've learned over the months that we say these numbers and people say, oh, that's terrible. I thought you could do thousands of transactions per second. And yes, we can and do. Or, we've demonstrated that we can do that. And we've had spikes of transactions per second that measure in the thousands. Very short-lived. But yeah, this is actual usage that we're talking about.
All right, thanks, Mance. Okay, the next couple questions we got from a few different folks, so we wanted to make sure to address them upfront and early on in this session. Leemon, I would want to keep my old account ID when I generate a new account. Will that be possible?
Oh yeah, sure. So if you have an account, you can use it to create another account. You can create as many accounts as you want, and they're pseudonymous. So, even if we wanted to stop you from doing so, we can't, because we don't know who you are. So yeah, sure, you can do that. And if you don't have any accounts, you can get someone else to make an account for you. And so, you have wallet software like Atomic that will just create accounts for you. So it's not hard to get an account. We also have a system set up where we give people accounts, but most people don't use that. Just, just use this wallet software that's out there and get accounts that way.
And in the future, as additional wallets come on board, you'll be able to transfer management of your account, the same account, from one wallet to another. So you won't lose your old account when setting up a new wallet.
Oh yeah, and that's not just in the future, it's today too. So if you say use the Hedera wallet, that software, to create your account, you could move it now if you wanted to Atomic or my HBAR wallet, or you can go to our webpage, hedera.com/guide, has all the different wallets that we're supporting, including hardware wallets like Ledger. So you can move your stuff to other wallets. That's certainly possible. And you can create new accounts using those wallets. Wallet, by the way, here is not an account. Wallet is the software that manages your account. So the account has an account ID, and you can move it from wallet to wallet to wallet all you want. It doesn't matter what software you use. And you can have multiple pieces of different software that all look at the same account. That's possible.
All right, thank you. And Mance, here's one we got a few different variations of as well. So can you explain more about who was allowed to participate in the recent fundraising and why?
Sure. So Hedera has always taken a very careful approach to regulatory compliance. This has been reflected in all of our fundraisings to date. The SAFs were conducted as private placements of securities and offerings that were exempt from registration under the Securities Act, but complied with securities laws. While the SAF was a security, we do not believe the HBARs should be treated as a security, but rather as a commodity. And however, we do not have certainty about whether the SEC or securities regulators will agree with that position because of the regulatory uncertainty in the market today, and reflecting our governance by diverse enterprises with different risk profiles. In this latest round of fundraising, we structured the HBAR sale agreements to comply with both the requirements for swaps under the Commodities Exchange Act and the federal securities laws, both. So to comply with the commodities laws, all purchasers must qualify as, quote, eligible contract participants, which in the case of natural persons or people may substantially exceed the requirements for accredited investors in securities offerings. There's a long definition of eligible contract participant and other requirements in the commodities laws, which can be read online. Just go check it out. I can't go through all of that here. But for example, just speaking generally, for an individual to be an eligible contract participant, he or she needs to have millions invested in aggregate on a discretionary basis. And by structuring the deal as the commodity swap, we satisfied both the requirements for the CFTC and the SEC simultaneously. In other words, while we continue to maintain the position that HBARs be treated as commodities, not as securities, structuring the sale in this way ensures that the agreements met the requirements both for the securities laws exemption if the SEC were to, the agreements met both the CFTC requirements and the securities law exemption requirements if the SEC were hypothetically in the future to decide that the token is a security. And so all of that is to say it reflects our position, taking a very conservative approach, a careful approach as it relates to the regulatory environment in the tokens.
Well, thank you, Mance. We appreciate you walking through all of that. I know it's complicated.
It is, and that was a mouthful.
All right, Leemon, switching back to the technology for a bit, has the Hashgraph consensus algorithm white paper been published in peer-reviewed scientific journals? If not, will it be?
Peer review? Sure. So we have it accepted at a peer-reviewed conference that I'm actually presenting in a couple weeks. So if I invite you to come see it. So the Coins 2020 conference is an IEEE peer-reviewed conference. It was in Barcelona, Spain. And is happening in just a couple weeks, and I'll be presenting there, and it's not too late for you to sign up and come to the conference. You notice I said it was in Barcelona, Spain. Not surprisingly, it is now in cyberspace. That seems to be where the world is going right now, which is terrible. I'd love to go see Barcelona, Spain right now, but I will get to see my living room instead. But that's okay. No sooner do I say I'm in my living room when you get to see my living room. There's my
I'm not sure what's happening there.
I use a green screen, and it is in the process of self-destructing. I didn't know they did that, but apparently they do that. Here is the wall of my apartment. Do you like my apartment wall? That's
self-destructing in slow motion. There we go.
It did, and it was recorded. How interesting. So I'm going to tell...
I think white is good. White is good.
Exactly. However, I need to tell it that I don't have a green screen. Otherwise, you're going to start seeing weird visual artifacts.
There we go.
There you are. So what you saw there for a moment was my apartment wall, which is white. A very creative color for an apartment wall. But there we go. Okay. People are saying I should get a better camera. I have a Logitech camera, and I like it. And I can do it without the green screen, but it turns out that if I do this, you'll notice that it does weird things. If I have the green screen, it does less of the weird things if I tell it I'm using a green screen. So that's why I use it, just so that we don't have this. Now, enough of that nonsense. The more important thing is the peer-reviewed conference that's coming up in 2 weeks that has moved to Barcelona, Spain. And it is something that you can sign up for, and you don't have to travel to Spain because now it's in cyberspace. It'll all be streamed. So I'll be streaming the talk about the Hashgraph algorithm, and then have questions and answers. So sorry for a long question with interesting things in the middle of it.
Thanks, Leemon. And if we don't have that on the Hedera website already, we will make sure that that talk will be posted up there so that people can link to it. And I think for Next town hall, we may be taking suggestions for artwork for Leemon's walls.
I wasn't aware we were taking such suggestions, but that would be fine. In fact, yes, we'll talk about artwork later.
All right, Mance, for the next one, there's a saying that what gets measured gets managed. So what metric is the Hedera management team using to measure how well Hedera is doing at achieving its why of becoming the trust layer of the internet?
Yeah. Well, so from the beginning, when making critical decisions that affect the trajectory of the company, our guiding light has always been, let's maximize the probability that Hedera will be a network that serves the market for 100 years. You've heard us talk about wanting to be a 100-year company. That in itself is not a metric, but it deeply informs our decision process. And so as for the metrics, there are two top-level categories that we measure progress against. All of our KPIs and OKRs flow from these two: decentralization and utilization. So under decentralization, our guiding light is to ensure that the network will continue to operate, even if all the Hedera staff were to leave the company. That's the goalpost, right? And there are two subcategories that we use for measuring decentralization. They fall as under technical indicators and operational indicators. Technical indicators measure code completeness. Operational indicators measure the maturity of our processes and the transfer of responsibilities from the staff of Hedera to the council members. So that's how we're measuring decentralization. For utilization, we look at TPS growth, ecosystem integration, in other words, integration with exchanges, wallets, custodians, etc. The growth of community tools such as explorers and SDKs, and the diversity of usage across the market segments. In other words, the range of projects in our pipeline, from startups to small and medium business to enterprise projects, all of these measures collectively give us a sense of how we're doing in terms of growth and market adoption. So in short, I'm very happy with the progress to date. Everything is looking good. And yes, we measure a lot here in Hedera.
Thanks, Mance. All right, Leemon, one of my favorite topics, use cases. How could Hedera be used for use cases such as supply chain tracking if the entire ledger is not recorded?
The entire ledger is recorded. So yes, interesting. So here's the deal. The ledger consists of the current state, which is held by all the mainnet computers, and the history, which is held by all the mirrornet computers. So you have the current state, that's like your current balance of your account. And then you have the history, which is all the transactions that have ever affected your account. Or the current state is for each of the consensus service topics. What is the running hash right now of all the messages that have flowed through this service? And what of all the messages that have gone in the last 3 minutes? That's the current state. And then the history is all the, isn't that fun? The history is all the states that have happened in the past prior to that. And so the history is on the mirror nodes, and the current state is on the mainnet nodes. And by separating them that way, you get a good speed up, which is part of the reason. Oh, my poor green screen. Okay.
Leemon, as long as you are safe, that's all we need to know.
I think I am safe, but if you see big green arms starting to wrap around me, then you know it's a horror movie or something. What was I saying? For things like supply chain, you end up using both of those. And for the mirror nodes, it isn't just what we run, it's what lots of people run. So Dragon Class and other people are running mirror nodes that have the history. And so you have both. And for supply chain tracking, that's fantastic. And in fact, when you do something like supply chain tracking, you can decide how much of it goes on the mainnet. You can actually store it in Hedera files, which means all the mainnet nodes keep it. Or you can use something like HCS topics, the consensus service topics, and then all the mirror nodes are storing your history. And you can do it either way. Or you can store the history in the mirror nodes, but a hash of the current running hash in the mainnet. There's lots of ways you can split things up. So you have lots of choices of how you would do that. And I appreciate the concerns that aliens were attacking me. Not yet.
We'll keep you posted on that one. All right, Mance, this next one is one that I know we have talked about a lot within this team. And I think some of our community echoes some of these concerns. I'm currently concerned about the monopoly over internet discourse and increasing levels of censorship by the big tech platforms, greatly narrowing freedom of expression. 6 of the independent investigative journalists I followed for years have recently been deplatformed. Can you say a few words about how Hedera might contribute to the cause of human freedom and open up information flows through decentralization of the internet?
Yeah, so it is something that we've talked an awful lot about here internally. I am going to punt a little bit, but what I would like to say is that we look forward to sharing more details in the future about this type of use case specifically. And what I'll share now is that Hedera Consensus Service is the ideal solution to log data in real time and make it publicly auditable. Think of it as a digital fingerprint for any media. This has big implications for all content providers, including investigative journalists. And I would just say, stay tuned.
All right, thanks, Mance. Leemon, switching back to more about our team and also on the engineering side, who was the last employee hired into Hedera's engineering team, and can you describe a little bit about them?
Oh, sure. So I'm kind of excited. We had the most recent who started work was yesterday. We had a new software engineer start yesterday, very experienced, really good guy. And is his hobby, what he just does for fun, is he invents new algorithms. So I really like that because, you know, my hobby, what I do for fun is invent new algorithms. And so very much into math and scientific computing and just great experience. I am really happy to have him with us. And so he started yesterday. And then we have another employee that starts next week. And he is a PhD cryptographer. And so he will be doing things with cryptography and our security and our all the things that are related to that, and some of the algorithm work as well. And so I'm very excited to have this. We really have a good team. I have been very impressed with the quality of people that we've managed to come to this team. And they're not just good computer scientists, they're also good human beings. I really like the people that we have. And they work really hard and they're excited about building something real that will affect the planet for 100 years and will make things better for real people. So I'm just really happy with the team we have. And I'm happy that you asked the question. I was able to tell you about a couple of people that have just joined and are about to start.
Thanks, Leemon. Never more important to enjoy and appreciate the team that you work with. Okay, one more for you, Leemon. Can you explain how Hedera account expiration works? Do I have to pay a fee and HBAR to keep a Hedera Hashgraph wallet active?
Sure. So the simple answer is, well, at the moment it doesn't. We give you the account forever for free. That's not sustainable. So eventually we'll have the expiration. And here's the thing you might really be worried about is, am I going to lose my account because when I ask it what its expiration date is, it's now in the past. I created it, you know, more than 3 months ago, and my expiration date's in the past. So first of all, don't worry. We are going to implement expiration, but when we do, you kind of all get grandfathered in. Everybody's account will have its expiration date set to the future of when we do this change. So you'll get a few more months beyond whatever date is that we implement the change. When we turn it on, when we turn on expiration, all the current entities, the accounts and the files and the topics and the smart contracts will get their expiration date pushed into the future by about 3 months. Everybody will get pushed a different random amount so we don't all expire on the same day. And so it'll be pushed into the future. So that's the first thing, is you don't have to worry that you're gonna just suddenly have it be lost. We will spend a lot of time messaging out, hey, we're about to turn on expiration, and then you'll have some months to renew your accounts. Then going forward in the long term, what will it be doing is you will be, the account has an expiration date, and at any time you can pay some HBARs to extend it, and then the expiration date becomes later. And so as long as you keep doing that, it never expires. If you forget, then when we get to the expiration date, the account is holding HBARs it's about to expire, what will happen is the account will extend itself. It will use some of the HBARs that are in it to extend itself. And then that will keep happening. It will periodically say, okay, I'm up to my expiration date again, and it will automatically extend itself. And so you don't have to worry that it will go away as long as you keep a few HBARs in it. And because it's really cheap, if you just put a few dollars of HBARs in it, it lasts a long time. And so you have that automatic self-renewal. Someday, when the account, it has nothing at all in it, no HBARs whatsoever, if it reaches the expiration date, then it expires, and we delete it, and it doesn't exist. Except it really does for another week. What we'll really do is we'll just kind of freeze it and sort of put it in a trash can for a week. And so it'll stop working. And maybe if you weren't keeping track of things, you'll notice it stopped working during that week, and you still have a week to resurrect it, pay the fee to make it be extended. But at the end of that week, then it really does go away. And at that point, you didn't lose any HBARs because the account was empty anyway. But if you want a new account, you'll have to create a new account. You'll have a new account ID. So that account ID is forever retired, and you don't have to worry about somebody else creating an account with your ID. It's not like a domain name, where if your website's domain name expires, someone else could get it and stand up another website with your name. Your ID is yours until it expires, and then nobody gets it. So it is unique to you. Nobody else will ever be able to get it. So that's how expiration will work. We're not, we'll do it eventually. I'm not in any particular hurry to turn it on. But you know, if we left it off forever, then eventually we'd all get clogged up and have a trillion old accounts lying around. And so we will turn it on at some point, and that's how it will work.
Got it. Thanks for walking us through that, Leemon. Mance, switching gears to the governing council, which is always a hot topic on these. What is the last thing the governing council voted on?
Yeah, so I think the last thing that the council voted specifically on was the creation of special interest groups, or often referred to as SIGs. The first SIGs are 3: data integrity, tokenization, and identity. Each SIG has at least 4 council members participating, but it's not restricted to just council members. So it's broader than council participation. There will be industry experts that participate, other companies and organizations can participate. The function of the SIG is to explore in all of its gory detail use cases in the subject areas. And so it's a great place for the community at large to come together and go deep into the specifics of use cases and how you would address those using the Hedera network. In fact, the first, I believe the identity SIG met this morning, and there was a large group of people there. Yep.
Great. Thanks, Mance. Okay, the next one, staying on the topic of community, and I'm going to tackle this one. Who at Hedera writes the answers to the FAQ on the website? And kudos to them, they do a really good job. So I'd like to just give a shout out to Brady Gentile and Gary Coons and Paul Madsen, who are our trio of FAQ experts, and we appreciate them always diligently following up there. So there are a number of questions that, if this is a first town hall for you or a recent town hall for you, we try to not repeat questions that are already addressed in the FAQ. We try to address new and timely ones, but you can always use that as a resource. So thank you to those guys. We appreciate all your hard work on that. All right, the next one, Leemon. Where can I find the proof that the sharded Hedera network is ABFT? And this person would also like to thank you for your tech and business genius that gives them hope for the future of humanity.
Well, you're very kind. I appreciate that. So we have sharding is when you have one network and you break it up into pieces, and each piece works independently and stores different information, but then they sometimes talk to each other. So if you have an account, it would only be stored in one shard. And if you want to send from an account that's in this shard to an account that's in this shard, then somehow the shards have to talk. And you do this to make things faster. Of course, you wouldn't do it until you've exceeded the speed limits of a single shard. It's always better to have everything in a single shard. You don't pay that overhead of communicating between them. And so right now we're a single shard, and someday we will implement sharding and we'll have a bunch of shards. And basically we'll do that when the TPS traffic on us is getting close to our limit, then we'll go to more shards. Now, as Mance said, our limit is 10,000 and we're seeing 10. So we're 1,000-fold away. But we're growing rapidly in TPS usage. And so I do think we'll get to 10,000 pretty soon. And so at that point, we want to have shards. Yes, I've worked out exactly how all the sharding will work. And the important thing is you will still have finality. That is important for sharding. Not only that, it will be BFT, which means there's guarantees that will come to consensus. You can't stop us from coming to consensus. We'll all come to the same consensus. Math guarantees a BFT. And it will be ABFT, asynchronous BFT, which means it still works correctly when people are doing DDoS attacks and when there are malicious firewalls slowing down packets arbitrarily long and all that stuff. So we have an ABFT algorithm for how we do sharding. And we haven't implemented it. We haven't written it up and published it. We'll do that at some point. The proof that it's ABFT is very simple. You can just look at it and see it because it takes advantage of the fact that within each shard, you're ABFT. And it turns out that if you know that each shard is ABFT, it's not all that hard to create a protocol between the shards that will be ABFT. And so we have all of that. We'll write it up at some point. We'll implement it at some point. We'll use it at some point. I'm just not really terribly in a hurry to do so because our TPS is going up fast. But until it reaches the limits, our real usage TPS is going up fast, but until it reaches the limit of TPS of the shard, there's no need for more shards. But we will do that. And if we keep going up fast the way we are, then we're going to get there in a year or two or whatever, and we will do sharding. I can't wait. That'll be fun.
Just one clarification on that. It is that today we're throttled to 10,000 TPS. We haven't yet met or demonstrated the limits of what we can do within a single shard.
Yeah, I should say that too. There's a lot of tuning and things that we can do. Even checking signatures on the GPU instead of the CPU. We can do millions a second on the GPU of signature checks. We're not even doing it because right now, we can do 10,000 and we're only getting 10. So, we're 1,000-fold more than we need. We're not even bothering with that. There's a lot of things we can do to speed up our limit. So yes, when our limit stops rising and our usage reaches that limit or gets close to it, at that point, we'll go to shards.
Got it. Thank you both. Okay, Mance, people want to hear about use cases. What is Hedera's primary use case and what steps are being taken to get this beautiful technology closer to adoption?
Well, what we're seeing, we introduced the tech a year ago into the market, and we didn't really know exactly where the traction would come, what the use cases might be that we would see over time as the industry began to understand this is something very different than what they'd seen in the past. If you go from a dozen transactions per second to potentially 10,000 TPS, then the use cases potentially are going to be different than what you've seen. And over the past almost a year now, what we've seen is a lot of interest in really three categories of use cases. One is immutable audit log for data sharing. The idea here is a category simply that it's used by multiple organizations that are coming to agreement on a shared view of the data, generally speaking. Number two is proof of action almost as a service. Think of it like a service. And in this case, HCS, the Hedera Consensus Service is being integrated into existing workflows to record in real time the activities or actions that are being taken as part of that workflow. AdStacks is a good example of this by recording in real time when end users click on links that result in advertising impressions. Another example might be recording when users make requests to have their PII, their personally identifiable information, removed from a database. These kinds of activities. And then finally, we're seeing a lot of interest in tokenization, not unsurprisingly, right? For stablecoins, we have the fastest, lowest cost option. FPOS is a good example of a customer that's doing this down in Australia. For a general tokenization example, we have DLA Piper. They're a great example. They're focused on tokenizing real estate assets. And the related, we see demand for the use of HCS to implement a token bridge for interoperability across token networks. So those are just a few sort of the major strokes, the broad strokes of what we've seen sort of get traction from our perspective. Now that the product has been in the market and we've been evolving it to meet the various demand.
Thanks, Mance. Okay, Leemon, I'm going to lob the next one over to you. If all HCS transactions are conducted with HBARs, describe the relationship between the value of HBARs versus the cost of HCS transactions. What happens to the cost of transactions as the price of HBARs goes up?
I love that question. So we are different from, I think, every other ledger out there. I think we are the only ledger that takes this approach. And the problem you're describing is a real one. If you use a ledger and you pay for your transactions using the currency of that ledger, then if the price of the currency doubles, the cryptocurrency doubles, then basically the cost of using the ledger just doubled. That's horrible. What businesses want, and we've been talking to them, they want predictable pricing. So what we have is something that we keep hearing from customers they really like. You pay for your transactions, like the HCS messages, you pay for your transactions in HBARs. You have to. I mean, that's just for technical reasons, every currency, every ledger has to be paid for with its currency. But what are HBARs? Well, HBARs, of course, are just our cryptocurrency, and the price floats up and down, and it could double or halve or whatever. You know, it can do anything. And if the price goes up, you'd say, oh, then everything gets more expensive. Except if the price goes up, what you mean is that when we trade on the exchanges, people are paying more dollars for HBARs. We have a computer that goes out to all the exchanges and polls them once an hour and says, what is the current price of HBARs? And takes all of those and then takes a median, and it's a weighted median according to how much traffic is going on in those different exchanges. And so we get this price of HBARs, this exchange rate. And then our exchange rate tool gives that to the Hedera network. And if the price of HBARs in dollars doubles, it becomes twice as expensive to buy an HBAR, then we start charging you half as many HBARs to do a transaction so that the cost to you is constant. This is a powerful concept. Maybe eventually everybody else will start copying it, because I think right now we're the only ones doing this. If the price of HBARs doubles, then the number of HBARs you have to use to do something gets cut in half, and it balances out, and the cost to you becomes predictable. And businesses, of course, and individuals care about having low prices, but they also care a lot about having predictable prices. And so we do both. We have incredibly low prices, but we also have them being predictable. And we have found that people are very, very interested in the predictability.
Agreed. All right, thanks, Leemon. Mance, here's a fun one. Is Hedera for, against, or neutral about becoming the de facto digital trust layer of sovereign currencies? Would you be able to elaborate on your stance on this?
Yeah, well, in a word, for. Well, we believe that this exploration of sovereign currencies by monetary authorities is a really important development in the industry as a whole. And we aim for Hedera to provide a consensus layer for those sovereign currency networks. And there'll be more about that in the future.
All right. I know we don't have too much time left. I might speed through some of these. Leemon, is it a concern that too many nodes will run on Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services instead of their own decentralized hardware, thus causing single points of attack via these cloud services?
Yeah, that'd be terrible. So we don't allow multiple people to run on Google Cloud Service. We have one council member running on Google Cloud Service, and it's the council member whose name you might have heard of. It is Google. So yes, they wanted to run on their own cloud service. But every council member runs their own computer. It's either in their own data center or it's on, it could be in a cloud, but it has to be a separate cloud. And it's actually written into the bylaws of the company itself, of Hedera, that all the council members have to be separated. You can never have a single entity in control of two different nodes. And so the nodes cannot run on the same cloud or be controlled by the same entity.
Great. Thanks, Leemon. Okay, Mance. This next one seemed timely and interesting because they shared some personal info too. Given the rapid proliferation in business and government personnel working from home due to COVID, are you seeing increased interest in enterprise usage of Hedera to provide security and speed to the range of supporting technologies required to facilitate a distributed workforce? I am asking the question from my context as a U.S. Air Force officer who has seen drastic and I believe somewhat permanent changes in the last few months as to how we conduct our work.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. I assume that you know that Leemon and I both are ex-Air Force officers. Spent a lot of years, both of us, working there for the Air Force. I'll try to be brief here. So yes, DLTs are ideally suited for a lot of use cases in industry that might help with the current situation. Just to rattle off some ideas: reputation systems that enable employees to take their reputation scores from one job to another, which sort of flows into the idea of decentralized identity and the ability to take your credentials, generally speaking, with you from role to role. Decentralized markets for sharing, the sharing economy, like a decentralized Uber or Airbnb or Upwork. These are ideas not just that people have talked about in the context of Hedera, but in the context of the DLT industry generally. Micropayments for incentivizing people to do certain kinds of activities or for sharing their data. Proof of action, as we've already mentioned, is something that there's been a lot of interest specifically with us. And, there are just a lot of different possibilities. Just a general statement, what we are expecting and seeing some of is the improvement in workflows within existing organizations and on existing products. There are really two categories. You could break the world of DLT use cases down into two categories. Those that are designed with DLT in mind from the beginning, and those products and services that already exist in the marketplace today that are trusted and are being used. And the addition of HCS, or the use of HCS in this case, is trust plus on top of what's already there. And when we think about enterprise, it's heavily, I wouldn't say it's heavily weighted, but there are a lot of examples on the enterprise side where you can add an additional layer of trust that doesn't already exist. It makes it possible for those enterprises to improve their product and service offerings compared to their competitors. So, you got both. And we have customers that are going deep in both categories.
All right. Okay, Leemon, next one, again, related to transaction fees, but a slightly different question. What happens if the dollar crashed and a new monetary system was established? Would that affect the transaction fee in any way, since it's pegged to the fixed amount for a transaction? Do you intend to stay the same, or would you have an adjustment for a more reliable asset class?
Sure. If the dollar starts to become unstable, we'll switch to a more stable currency, or we'll switch to gold or something. So yeah, if it looks like there's the danger of having hyperinflation on the dollar or something, we'll switch to something else. Sure.
All right. Mance, going back to the council for just a minute, what stops council members from getting inspired by Hedera's work and starting their own DLTs?
Yeah, well, it's always the case that any organization, including council members, could be inspired by Hedera and decide to create their own network. I think maybe some of that has already happened in the past, but they're not council members, the market in general. But there's very little motivation to do so on the part of the council members. What we've built is at the bottom of the tech stack. Think of it like the TCP/IP layer on top of which everything else gets built, by analogy. If an organization decides that they want to compete for that layer, then they have to build a code base. And by the way, they can't use Hashgraph. And they have to build a network with an equivalent set of members and node operators. It's a lot of work. And most companies care more about building the products and solutions higher up in the stack, because they can extract more value at those higher layers. So they will likely derive that value by building on top rather than trying to go and build a competitive solution at the protocol layer. But anybody could decide to try and do that.
All right. No easy feat by any means. Okay, we've talked about some big topics today. Leemon, can you address political correctness? What if, say, a DApp is politically incorrect? It affects certain parties. By virtue of a decentralized nature, is it impossible to avoid political correctness? Is it desirable? And how will governance deal with censorship on Hedera?
So we have in our software built in that we cannot go out and kill an account that someone has. We can't filter the messages flowing through HCS. We have the software built to make it so that it just does not allow some of these things. We can't freeze your account. We can't take your money, your HBARs, or anything like that. So we try very hard to make this decentralized software that you can trust in a lot of ways. There are some things around the files, but typically the files don't even have information. They have hashes. And so we probably wouldn't be doing anything there. So basically we don't have the ability in our software for the council to go out and do bad things arbitrarily. Things will of course disappear if they expire and you don't pay to renew them. But we have never, we have no plans to change the software. And here's the interesting thing. The software that we have, the services have already been released open source. So if we ever did change the software in bad ways, you would know about it, you would see it. And if we, someday we'll have the full mirror nodes, and then if we even release software that's different from the real software, you'll know about it. You'll be able to spy on that. So there's a fairly large amount of measures to protect you from something bad happening secretly. And we've structured it so that bad things can't happen. And we have a council that worries about their reputation. And if they were to go in and change things in really bad ways, they would be reticent to do that. So that's where we are. That's how our system was designed. We're a common carrier. What you do on top of us isn't our business. We're the common carrier.
All right, thank you, Leemon. Mance, I think a lot of people are dealing with this in their own lives and with their own work. Is Hedera going to move to a work from home company for the foreseeable future? Could you cut expenses in certain ways by doing so?
Yes, already done. So that's pretty simple. Yes, we started as a work from home company. We did have offices for a period of time, but in this environment, we've gotten rid of those offices and the leases where we could and cut costs, and people have been working from home like most of the world since this whole COVID situation started.
All right. Okay, we're going to jump into some of the fun round, which I know we get feedback from that folks in the community really enjoy. Before we do that, I do want to just thank everybody for sending in their questions and remind folks that we do solicit these ahead of time, so that if you have questions, please definitely send them in ahead of time so we can get them in the queue. Unfortunately, we can't answer all of them, so if they, if they come in during the call, we are typically not able to answer them. Again, we try to not answer things that are already in the FAQ because we want to be respectful of our community's time and the folks who've been with us a long time. We want to make sure we're not just giving them the same information that's already on the website. And then, we get a number of questions that ask us to speculate on a number of things. And so our two scientists and, and engineers here, we do not engage in much speculation at all. We're happy to share thoughts on the future, but certainly, not a whole lot of speculation happening. So we want you to continue to send in those questions, and we try to get through as many of those each month as we possibly can. So a few that we've heard from this month, I think last month's discussion about Bali led to this next one. Leemon, where is your favorite scuba diving destination?
Oh, the Air Force sent me to Guam for a few weeks, and that's where I learned how to scuba dive when I was in college. And great place, nice place to dive there. Guam is one of the world's best places. US Virgin Islands is nice. But you know what? The unusual thing I did that I think was unusually fun was I got to scuba dive in Florida with the manatee. So it was really, really shallow water. You could just hold your breath. You didn't really need to scuba, but it was so much fun. The manatee are really cool creatures, and they're so gentle, they're gigantic, and they're very friendly. You can come up close to them, and it is kind of sad that a lot of them have scars on their backs from motorboats that weren't being careful. And so if you drive a boat around manatee, please be careful. But I don't know, maybe that was the most fun, unusual diving that I ever did was with the manatee.
Thanks, Leemon. And yes, PSA, save the manatees. They're adorable. Okay, Mance, what projects in the general blockchain and DLT space outside of Hedera do you find the most interesting?
Yeah. Well, while I'm not going to name specific projects, there is work going on in the industry that tries to address the problems of sourcing liquidity for DEXs, decentralized exchanges. I personally think this is fascinating work, and it's something that I'm following very closely.
All right, Leemon, cats or dogs, or if you don't want it to be that binary decision, any other sea or land animals?
I love dogs. I would probably love cats, but I'm allergic and I just get sick when I'm around them. So that doesn't make it much fun, but I love dogs.
Yep, I feel your pain there. All right, Mance, do you listen to music while you work? If so, what kind? And does any music put you in a flow state?
Yeah. So I don't listen to music at work. I do listen to music all the time outside of work. And if you're interested, I'll give you a sense of my taste. So I use Pandora like a lot of the world, and I have about 50 stations in my Pandora account. Just a handful, sort of representative handful, is Warrant from the 80s, a hair band. If you grew up in the 80s, you'll know the group Warrant. Roy Rogers and the Sons of the Pioneers from the 30s and 40s. It's Western music. There's a little bit of yodeling in there, believe it or not. Amazing Grace, traditional gospel. Rodrigo E. Gabriela. I characterize it as hard flamenco. You should check it out. Rodrigo E. Gabriela. Count Basie. Everyone knows Count Basie. Most everybody loves Count Basie. Lo-fi, bluegrass, and Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack. So those are a handful of channels that I listen to. That's pretty representative, very eclectic.
All right, and the YouTube recording of this session will now have manatees and yodeling in the keywords, so I'm sure fine.
I just haven't listened to much yodeling in my life. I'm afraid I just haven't never gotten into it.
There's always new quarantine pastimes, Leemon. All right, Leemon, I don't know if you even play this, but hypothetically, you are sitting around a table with your friends playing Dungeons and Dragons. What sort of character are you playing, and what would his superpower be?
So I never really had friends into D&D, so I never got to play it. My guess is I would have enjoyed it, but I do enjoy RPGs, which is sort of a video game version of D&D. And in those games, I always end up choosing the magic user as opposed to the strong guy or the really fast guy or the sneaky guy or whatever. I always choose the magic guy. I've wondered why that is. And I think that it's because, the computer science is a lot like magic. It's just, you just create an idea. And if you think about it hard enough and say the magic words, then things happen. And so the same thing that drives me to be a computer scientist and a mathematician drives me to be the magic guy in these games. So yeah, I think I like doing that.
All right, Mance, it seems like we cannot get through one of these without a question on your cooking. So what is your favorite pasta dish, and any tips to make pasta delicious?
Yeah, so pasta is just comfort food, period, right? It's just one of those go-to staples when you just want to feel good. It's a hard choice. I have two favorite dishes. The one I'm going to go with here is ziti with vodka, tomato cream sauce, shrimp, and homemade sourdough. I don't have necessarily a special ingredient. If there was anything, I would point to lemon infused vodka for the sauce, but it's one of my favorites. A close number 2 would be tagliatelle with bolognese, and we make that regularly as well.
Oh, and I have to say, my favorite food is anything Mance is cooking. He is an amazing chef.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Wherever you are in the world, you are probably now hungry for breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
I had ziti for lunch just before we went on here.
Very nice. We are heading to the top of the hour. But Mance, what is that you're wearing?
Yeah, so I wanted to show the group here. This is a t-shirt created by a community member. Don't know his real name, but his Twitter tag is extra_hardcore, HRDCOR. I guess I could show the back as well. Maybe try. But thank you, number one. It's very cool. And we printed some of these out for me and Leemon and some family members. And we certainly appreciate it. Yeah, so that's it. Way cool t-shirt.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's just it.
You know, we really do appreciate this community. You guys have sustained us and you know, shared your support and that continued sense of community through all of this, and we want to thank you for that. We did take a poll last month, Hederans versus Hederians, and this was a political contest by a wide margin, but in other terms by a slightly narrower margin, Hederians won. So I think we will be taking ideas for how we can use that, places you guys would like to see that. I'm sure that will be on the welcome sign, welcoming everybody to Bali when we all eventually get there. But thank you, Hederians. This is such a wonderful community. We appreciate you. We are thinking about you all out there, and keep the questions coming, and we will keep trying to provide as much information and insight and transparency as we can. So everybody have a wonderful day.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you.